This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
Texas is a nightmare. It's not to say that everyone who lives there is a nightmare or a problem or stupid or racist. That's not the case. Look, I may live in California now, but I was raised for the vast majority of my life in Idaho, which is also a nightmare. Right now we're witnessing, I'm going to get to Texas. Obviously, you clicked on the video, you know what it's about. We're witnessing right now an open casting call for racists all across the country. The Republican Party is no longer using dog whistles or coded language. They are now, through legislation, attempting to indoctrinate our children and whitewash history, erasing the bad parts of our history that they don't want to teach our kids about because they might have a fulsome picture of the founding of the United States and all of the historical events that lead to us to where we are today. They would have a full understanding of the good and the bad. I'm going to read about the Texas Senate S.B. 3 and some of the ridiculous assertions that are made and what they're trying to do with this legislation. I'm going to read from Bloomberg. This article, Texas Senate votes to remove required lessons on civil rights. The Texas Senate on Friday passed legislation that would end requirements that public schools include writings on women's suffrage and the civil rights movement in social studies classes. Among the figures whose works would be dropped, Susan B. Anthony, Cesar Chavez, and Martin Luther King Jr., whose I Have a Dream speech and letter from a Birmingham jail would no longer make the curriculum cut. The SB 3, which was passed on a vote of 18-4, now is stalled because the House can't achieve a quorum while a breakaway group of Democrats is out of the state. The special session is set to end on August 6th because the governor brought them back for a special session to get some things done. Kudos to the Democrats who fled the state. It seems like an extreme measure to some, but it is actually stopping damaging things from being done by the Texas legislature. It is action when action was needed. This bill would remove more than 24 teaching requirements from a new law, HB 3979, that bars the teaching of critical race theory and academic framework exploring racism's shaping of the country. That law included a list of historical figures, events, and documents required for inclusion in social studies classes. The Senate-passed bill would remove most mentions of people of color and women from those requirements, along with the requirement that students be taught about the history of white supremacy and the ways in which it was morally wrong. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. The Senate-passed bill would remove most mentions of people of color and women from those requirements. It would also remove a requirement that students be taught about the history of white supremacy and the ways in which it was morally wrong. They're removing a requirement to teach that white supremacy is morally wrong. That's where we are with Republicans, not just in Texas, but all over the country. That's where we are. The measure would bar the teaching of the 1619 Project, a New York Times initiative exploring U.S. history starting at the date enslaved people arrived in the English colonies. Now, there's a lot of dipshits who run Texas. A lot. And Dan Patrick is one of them. He is the lieutenant governor. He and Greg Abbott are different characters, but really they're the same douche. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who presides over the Senate, said in a statement after the vote that, quote, "Get ready for this. Senate Bill 3 will make certain that critical race philosophies, including the debunked 1619 founding myth, are removed from our school curriculums statewide. Parents want their students to learn how to think critically, not be indoctrinated by the ridiculous leftist narrative that America and our Constitution are rooted in racism," Patrick said. How, pray tell, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, is the country and our Constitution not rooted in racism? When black Americans, they were born here, enslaved, still Americans, weren't counted as full human beings by our Constitution. The founding document, our Declaration of Independence from Great Britain, from the Crown, was written by a man who owned hundreds of slaves, raping Sally Hemings, impregnating her, and save it with they had a loving relationship. She was a slave. She could not consent. It is impossible to consent when you are a prisoner, when you are owned property. He wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Not true. When black Americans were not counted as full human beings, were able to be owned like property. Racism is rooted in our history, and it has been a hundreds of year endeavor to root it out, to eradicate it. The pernicious effects of our original sin, the manner with which we've treated people of color, blacks, American and indigenous peoples, the genocide that took place there. It is. We do have a racist history. We do have a racist past. And the only way we're going to correct it is if we learn from it, if we understand how it has affected and impacted the manner with which we've grown up to be a big boy country. The bill would prohibit teachers from being compelled to talk about current events or controversial issues, instructing those choosing to engage with students to discuss without, quote, giving deference to any one perspective. State Senator Judith Zaffirini had this to say, speaking on the chamber floor, that legislation amounts to trying to tie the hands of teachers. And this quote really says it all. How could a teacher possibly discuss slavery, the Holocaust, or the mass shootings at the Walmart in El Paso or at Sutherland Springs in my district without giving deference to any one perspective? How do you discuss the KKK, or Nazism, or slavery for that matter, without giving deference to the perspective that those things are morally reprehensible? You don't give an equal time both sides argument about white supremacy unless that's exactly what you want to do. Unless that is your goal and that is your objective with this legislation. If that's the case, winner, winner, chicken dinner, Texas. Mission accomplished. Absolutely. The KKK, it's not morally wrong. It's just it's an alternative fact. It's an alternative viewpoint about equality. Because if you truly believe the Constitution, and if you truly believe the phrase about all men are created equal, written by Thomas Jefferson, a man who didn't believe it or practice it, then you would want to teach that white supremacy is a scourge. That white supremacy is morally wrong. But it can't be taught that way in Texas if this bill is to come to fruition. Because Greg Abbott will certainly sign it. Dipshit governor of Texas. Nightmare governor of Texas. What do you think? I know a lot of people think I'm a little radical about this. I do not believe that. I believe I am on point because I have a fairly competent grasp of our history that has really only come around over the past few decades, because I certainly wasn't taught this as a Christian nationalist fundamentalist as a child, being raised like that. What do you think, though? You can call me, leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. You can email me daily at dollemore.com. Thank you for engaging with my content. Thanks for checking out however many videos that get served to you. If you haven't subscribed, click subscribe. Become a subscriber so that the content can be delivered straight to you. Click the bell so you get notifications. There's something you can do on your cell phone to make sure that YouTube actually does deliver the recommendations to you. That would be fantastic. Follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now. I seem to be getting banned from TikTok like every other day, so we'll see how long that lasts. Consider becoming a channel member. If I bring you some value on a day-to-day basis, click the join button, see what's involved. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a channel member and support and produce my work here. You can also do it on Patreon, patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. That would be fantastic. You can subscribe to my podcast. I got all kinds of stuff going on. Anyway, I love you guys. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time. Read these bills. Read these bills. Educate yourself about what's going on. I love you. I'll see you next time. Until then, be genuine. Take care of one another.